Hello everybody, Tyrone the God 3 here, and welcome to a segment I'm going to start doing on Sundays. I know today's Saturday, but I wanted to go ahead, and this will be like the pilot episode for it. And I don't know how long it's going to go, considering like just how many issues there are, and I can use you guys' helps in the comment section below. But what I'm going to call this is PokeResearch. And what this segment is basically, I'm really tired of a lot of like things happening that's attacking the Pokemon franchise, and they're things that really don't make sense, or like at first glance I can see why people say these things, but let's look into reality of it and let's actually do our research, and then we can go ahead and say what we think. So for today's segment I will be tackling the meat of Pokemon, which is the Pokemon battles. So, Pokemon battles, are they related to cockfighting and dogfighting? That's what we're going to tackle today. So, let's break down some things first. Cockfighting is a sport that was made 6,000 years ago in Persia. And because of this, it consists of two roosters fighting each other, basically to the death. Or until one is so beaten down it can't put up any more of a fight at all. This sport has actually been increased several times and changed up, and they even made a regionals for it in certain places like Mexico and things like that. And some roosters have even been equipped with metal spurs, some have been trained personally, and then they are souped up to be ready to fight, and then when the loser loses they give up money, and the winner gets money for winning. Much like the concept of Pokemon, however there are several differences. Well, let's go into one thing to the similarities. First off, yes, the two will train their roosters in order to fight off against each other. Okay, check. And then we have the metal spurs that are equipped to them. Yeah, Pokemon can also be equipped with weapons to make battling a lot easier for them, at least in the video game world. And then we've got gambling that takes place on whoever loses or wins, and then if you win, then you win an amount of money. Yes, even in the video games that happens. But let's break down a couple of things first. Let's tackle one thing at a time. First off, let's tackle the money issue. The money issue in Pokemon is only because it's an RPG. Let's be honest. In regular Pokemon battles in the anime, there's no sign of any monies being transferred through one trainer to another through the use of battle. Usually currency's kind of iffy when it comes to Pokemon. Ash doesn't have an actual job, which begs the question, how can he afford to do half of the shit he does? But it's an anime, who cares? Also, as far as the video games go, it's only because it's a video game. The only reason that you get money for winning trainer battles is because if you didn't, there'd be no way to buy any hyper potions, super potions, paralyzed heals, full heals, repels. Yeah, you would be completely broke and there'd be no type of economy. So yeah, the game obviously needed an economy so that you can use that money wisely and that you can buy the inventory items that you need in order to survive in the game. So yeah, that's strictly a video game thing. Now you could probably ask yourself, well, how come you don't get money from wild Pokemon then after you beat them? Let's be honest, does that make any logical sense? Except for if Meowth uses Payday on you. So yeah, there you go. That's the reason for the money thing. Let's tackle the death. The thing about it is, Pokemon fight, and when Pokemon fight, they get various things that can happen to them. Status ailments, if you will. They can get burned, paralyzed, poisoned, frozen, asleep, and many other things like attracted or confused. Fighting to the point of this much would be considered very high in abuse, but from what I think, obviously Pokemon are a lot more powerful than regular everyday animals. I'm sorry, Poochie, you suck compared to a Pikachu. It's just Pokemon can take more damage. Why do you think that they can heal so quickly? Why do you think that all you need to do is spray some hyper potion on them and they're back up to their feet in no time? How come when you have all of them basically fainted, you can take them to Nurse Joy and she heals them up in a couple of seconds? We could go on the fact that obviously this is a fictional world, but outside of that, let's look at the factors. Pokemon are a lot more resilient than everyday human beings and animals. I mean, think about it. Ash has been electrocuted Lord knows how many times by his Pikachu, but he's still able to walk, stand, and use his body perfectly fine. But that's another topic for another day. The point is, Pokemon within themselves in the world that we are in can take a lot more damage than a regular animal. And some of these attacks are only meant in the world of Pokemon. Now let's tackle the anime and video game together on this one. A lot of times in the anime, Nurse Joy states that Pokemon aren't meant to fight as a personal duel or fight or to the death. She states this one time in the episode where Charmander is being left on the rock, and Damien basically leaves it. And Brock gets mad as well as Ash, and they're about to have a Pokemon battle in order to settle it. Nurse Joy states that Pokemon aren't used to settle personal brawls and debates. It's disrespectful to the Pokemon and their trainer. That's what she says. Look it up. However, when we look at this and break it down a bit more, we can see that the Pokemon in themselves have followed various rules. Sportsmanship, if you will. And these rules are basically set in stone. You're not allowed to fight in the Pokemon Center because, you know, this is where Pokemon get healed after their various battles. Except for in Black and White. For some reason you can do that there. Another thing to really talk about and tackle as far as Pokemon morals when it comes to battling is, one thing I suggest that you all do is look at a video made by Noggin. And what Noggin's really good because he actually tackles a lot of cool little theories about the world of Pokemon. But there's one video in particular I really respect of Noggin's, and it was a theory I had a long time ago. And the video states, why can Pokemon only learn 4 moves and completely forget other moves? He states in the video that Pokemon do know more than 4 moves when they are around with the trainer, but the International Pokemon League rules state that Pokemon can only use 4 attacks. While it's never said in general, his theory is that this is how the rules are set up. Now, what does this have to do with the topic at hand? Here's what I think. The International Pokemon League basically states that not only can Pokemon only know 4 moves, a trainer can only carry 6 Pokemon, and a trainer can only use 1 Pokemon in battle unless the rules are an exception based on double battles, triple battles, rotation battles, and all those others. So, because of these rules that are being set, no excess fighting is allowed. Once a referee is there to call the shots of whether or not a Pokemon is fainted, that's it. The Pokemon can no longer fight. That means that the Pokemon that's opposing the Pokemon that's fainted is not allowed to attack the Pokemon that's already face down and fainted. This is to prevent the Pokemon from getting seriously injured or access injury or even death. So that tackles that. That's the main difference between cockfighting and dogfighting. In most situations, when it comes to cockfighting or dogfighting, the rooster or the dog will face damages that they can't really recover from. Some have had their limbs basically completely destroyed, gnawed off, ripped apart, torn, jugulars cut, and every other damage under the sun, and some have even been killed because of this. In cockfighting, early cockfighting, they did fight to the death. So, what makes that different from Pokemon? Well, Pokemon fight till they're fainted, which in theory sounds bad within itself, but we have to remind ourselves of the sport boxing. In boxing, 2 fighters go into the ring and fight each other until one faints. You're not allowed to fight anymore until that person gets right back up and is ready to continue the fight. Yes, there have been deaths in boxing, but that's usually due to the boxer refusing to stay down regardless of his conditions. At that point, it's more of a their choice and not a our choice thing. So, let's look at it this way. Pokemon is more similar to boxing than it is cockfighting or dogfighting because it's a competition-based brawl. Even in like martial arts and taekwondo and jiu-jitsu tournaments, fighters will fight to the point where one is knocked down, not to the point where one can no longer put up a fight anymore. This is the major difference. Pokemon is a sport, a good sportsmanship sport, not a bloodbath, not a brawl. Another good example of this would be in the anime movie Pokemon the first movie. Check out that commentary, by the way. Dean and KG and I did a whole commentary over that one. So, there you go. But, anyway, shameless advertisement aside, when we look at things, Nurse Joy even states that Pokemon aren't meant to fight. Not like this. What she meant by like this is not to the death. Not to the point where they're doing physical, ultimate harm to each other's health. To the point where the Pokemon can no longer stand. Ever. Pokemon aren't meant to fight like that. We see hundreds of times in the anime that the trainers and even the Pokemon themselves will shake hands for a battle that's well done. Even Team Rocket respects the moralistic views of how Pokemon should stand when it comes to an all-out battle, but even oddly enough, even still, even in the video games, they'll back up from you once you've made all of the Pokemon faint. Now, does fighting something to the moment of it fainting wrong? In most odd standards, yes, it is. However, here's the core difference. I believe that there's a registered Pokemon fainting and an actual Pokemon passing out. Notice how they don't use the term pass out. I think faint was probably a weird word to use because faint is usually described when you're so battered and torn and beaten to the point where you no longer can stand. I would prefer the term knocked out more, but there was probably text limitations, and that's why they just stuck with faint. However, I believe that there's a state of faint where the Pokemon has no energy. You can be tired and still be active. Why do you think Pokemon in the video games are still able to use their HM moves even though they're fainted? Yes, they're fainted and fatigued and tired, but they're not tired enough to the point where they can't do anything. They're just tired enough to the point where they can't battle. And the rules state that if a Pokemon cannot battle, they can't be sent out to battle. So, forcing a Pokemon to battle, even in its quote-unquote fainted state, would be against the rules because the Pokemon could wind up getting seriously injured. Now, let's tackle one of the major differences between cockfighting, dogfighting, boxing, and Pokemon that I really wanted to say for the last part of this segment. Now, if we dive a bit more into our research, we notice that, like I said in the start of the video, cockfighting took place 6,000 years ago in Persia. Now, let's tackle one thing that Satoshi Tajiri, the creator of Pokemon, had inspiration from when he made the concept of Pokemon. Satoshi Tajiri stated that his concept of Pokemon came from bug collecting. He was a bug collector. He collected many different bugs, and then when there were rare bugs that other people had, he would trade his older bugs with their bugs in order to have bugs of his own. Which begs the question, why isn't Heracross his favorite Pokemon? Yet Poliwag is. Weird. Anyway, the reason of this would probably make more sense to compare Satoshi Tajiri, since he's from Japan, obviously. This means that Satoshi Tajiri came up with the concept of Pokemon in Japan, obviously, through the concept of collecting and trading different bugs. Now, what does this have to do with cockfighting or dogfighting? Nothing. And that's exactly it. It would make a lot more sense to compare Pokemon to beetle or insect fighting, which took place in China and Japan. That's a little bit closer to where Satoshi Tajiri lives, other than Persia. In insect fighting, the insects fought, and it was a bit different than cockfighting and dogfighting, more or less the sense because in cockfighting and dogfighting they fought to the death, whereas in insect fighting they fought till major things happened. One, a bug was knocked out of the ring, or a bug accidentally ran out of the ring. There's a third situation in which the bug is knocked down and can no longer get back up. They're not injured, they're just knocked down. This was most common in beetle fights because of the way beetles were shaped and how beetles are territorial anyway. So they would have fights, and then the fights would consist of one beetle falling over and not being able to get back up. This is a lot more relative to what Pokemon is about. It makes sense. Satoshi's from Japan. Beetle fighting took place in Japan. Beetle fighting consists of bugs being knocked over. That's it. Not brutally injured, not mortally wounded, just knocked over. To the point where they can still fight again. And the fights weren't even deadly. But let's be honest, if we were having a Pokemon game where all you were trying to do is just slightly nudge the opponent over, it wouldn't be much fun now, would it? It's all the fact that it's an anime and video game, and people just need to chill out. So slow down there, PETA, and chill out, Team Plasma. Stop looking at things in black and white. Pun kind of intended. But that was PokeResearch for today. Let me know what you think. I will see you all then, everybody. Tyrone the God 3, out. Hello everybody, Tyrone the God 3 here, and I just want to take a minute to thank a certain someone for making this awesome picture of Dedenne reading a giant book for the PokeResearch segment. I'm going to give a big shout out to Sonji31 who made this epic Dedenne picture. A lot of y'all had saw my request of Dedenne reading a book on Twitter to see if y'all can make a picture, so I appreciate all of your entries, but Sonji31 is the one that won in the end. So thank you for this awesome picture.